cold. Same smell. The olive tree smell. Still I remember the ways very well. Still Moria, same. But more silent, really. We didn't have this silent before here. So there always have been fire, small fire, big fire in different parts of the camp for many reasons happened always and take people life, put people life in danger. I was starting to having heavy panic attacks and some nights before that was fight happened, somebody got killed and I was kind of around that area and I saw the blood and you know this put my stress and my panic attack in like a greatest level. So I had every night panic attack. I had every night this kind of pressure. So I came from doctor the day next to that and we saw people like start running, go to the app of the camp. So from that direction was a lot of people and they trying to also turn off the fire and from back we decided to go from back to help.
داخل کانکس بگی داخل کانکس اون نمیرسه اونجا.
We were like putting stuff in some point, like to try to put the stuff out that I just put a burning blanket off, like try to put it out of the burning area. And I saw like a 12 years old girl burned and like in this kind of direction, like lie under this blanket and completely burned. Just like a burnt person, like I cannot even describe, I cannot and it all people around that area, we all just like shaked and just like freeze and just fall down. Like we lost it. We lost this all energy for turning off and everything. And then the father of that girl and the mother and the people come and it was a moment that I cannot maybe describe with my words. But then the father put the kid, the burning kid, in a white sheet and 4 people holding this sheet. And they start moving around the Moria, around the street, and crying and shouting like, "That's my daughter." And everybody was just looking. And it was like a ceremony with this dead body. After that, I was, for few nights, I had this blood in my hand in my dreams. And every time when I was come and walk for 1 year after that, this street, always I had this picture in front of me. And always I feel panic attack because of this. Now I can see they changed a lot, Moria. They changed a lot. They broke in the house, the streets, like more tree graves grow up. But if they can delete the Moria from this place, the place of Moria, they cannot delete the Moria name. Back to the tent.
Lesbos.
On the Greek
It was
island.
home to one of Europe's biggest refugee camps.
Almost 25,000 people endure squalid conditions in Moria.
Some people have lived here for more than 2 years.
Things get worse every day.
Open the border! 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 Give us free! Give us free!
The goal and the hope, the plans that I had for my life before to arrive in Greece, there were a lot. They were heavy in my shoulder, in my bag, in my backpack, and everywhere. I had them. I carried them. When I arrived in the camp, they were not helpful for me because there was one goal: survive.
I remember when we entered to the Moria camp, everywhere was fence, like big and tall walls, the guard, the police, crowd. I was shocked, like, where I am coming to the Europe or I'm entered to the prison. It was terrible.
The first day I arrived there, they just take all my documents and stuff and ask where I come from, why, for short interview, and then they just gave me some sleeping bags and a mattress, the sponge mattress, and they told me you have to find by your own where you want to sleep. So I basically was sleeping in the streets.
Like, it was just some plastics that we got from some volunteers, and we were there for almost 3 weeks and sitting on plastics. I was wondering myself, like, what kind of camp is here? Like, why they're keeping people like this also?
À Moria, nous étions exposés pendant l'hiver dans des petites tentes. Pas d'électricité, pas de l'eau chaude, pas de bonne nourriture. C'est pas l'humanité. On a risqué nos vies pour traverser la mer Égée, pour venir ici, non pour vous nous abandonner. Nous avons venu ici pour chercher la paix, pour chercher la justice, la bonne vie, la bonne gouvernance. Où va le monde? Ça c'est l'Europe. L'Europe. Vous avez donné le fardeau en Afrique. Vous avez cherché la guerre en Afrique pour que nous fuyions nos pays, pour que venir ici. C'est à cause de vous. C'est à cause de vous nous sommes ici. Cherchez la paix.
It was kind of a constant display of how bad things can get with people enduring, nonetheless. And that ante kept on being upped.
Right. We're gonna go in the other side now. Okay. We definitely need a team in here. God, how do they expect people to... Everything is chock-a-block. Everything is chock-a-block. Yeah, it is really rank in here. The smells are just unbelievable. I would have said these things need pumping out. If we're going to do a clean-up, we're going to have to I have to look around the back of here and see what we got. You do your washing here. Okay. In a few weeks' time, it's going to get really bloody cold, and these lads are Jesus. Okay, I'm behind you, so don't look around. Okay. Jesus, so they got a hole in the pipe, which they're coming down to have a shower in, with all that rubbish and shit down there. Let me put this down. Let me look. I'm not going to film you, okay? I just want to film this. صور صور هاي صور. You want to be okay?
تمام
You don't mind? Okay.
لا حمام.
Well, the smell here is unbelievable. Really bad, but at least they're getting clean. Look, he's got his trousers on and everything. In a few weeks when it gets freezing cold, how are they going to do this?
Water no.
It was really, I cannot really find the words to describe it, but it was really, really hell. Like I've never seen such a place. I went to a lot of refugee camps in different parts of the world, and nothing was comparable to Moria. The camp was really overcrowded, so in the peak there were 25,000 people who were living in a space for 3,000 people.
You know, there was one street into the actual camp itself that was kept open, and that was the main causeway, and that was covered with people, even sort of the sharp uphill grade. You got to this point where before you thought everybody was sleeping on top of each other, and then you realized that really there was more, that people could be crammed into that space.
There was a lot of tents. People were everywhere without any limitation.
They started building Moria as a reception center in 2013, and because of what we called back then the crisis of 2015, Moria became the center of arrivals.
Okay. Rubber boats are crossing the Aegean Sea.
Hundreds of thousands of people have been arriving to Lesbos over the past few months.
Refugees escaping wars are risking their life in order to reach Europe, only to find themselves stuck.
What was called the refugee crisis was not actually a refugee crisis. It was more of a reception crisis, meaning that the EU and the member states, including Greece, were not ready to manage the increased number of requests of asylum. We didn't have the capacity to react. We were very slow, we were late, and we also find an excuse to blame the others. We blamed the EU for not helping us and the lack of solidarity, etc. So it became also a political debate and a political discussion, and migration became part of the toolbox, if you want, of the political parties to discuss the actual crisis, which was the financial one.
Today, we have finally reached an agreement between the EU and Turkey. The agreement aimed at stopping the flow of irregular migration via Turkey to Europe. The days of irregular migration to Europe are over.
because of what we call the EU-Turkey Common Declaration from March 2016 that created the buffer zones in the islands of the northern Aegean, Moria grew bigger and bigger and bigger. It overflowed, and because of the thousands of people that were hosted, it occupied nearby olive groves, etc. So it became an uncontrolled, if you want, type of exterior camp linked to the initial reception center.
It was probably around December or early January 2016 that we began to witness the real establishment of what Moria would become, which was a place of semi-permanent residence. A place where, even a year later, people were being told that they would be stuck there they would need to wait at least a year or 18 months or 2 years to get the response to their interview.
So, you've been here a while now?
Yeah.
How long have you been?
I've been here 1 year, 1 month.
God. So how many people in each tent?
In this tent?
How many in each one?
I put 6 people, 8 people.
8 people in a tent? Yeah. Okay, some of the tents inside with the families are even really busy.
I personally lived there. I had to live there for 9 months, around 9 months. And these 9 months actually felt like 9 years somehow to me.
I was living in Moria camp for 3 years. And imagine during all these years, we were living in the tents, inside Moria, under the rain and snow.
The weather there is like an island weather that comes rain a lot, and the summer is horrible and it's so hot. Even you cannot stand or sitting down under the tent.
There were a lot of resources being spent on very little. There was a lot of money and a lot of activity and a lot of human capital going into very temporary fixes because all of the main problems were systemic. There was no answer for the problem of the toilets. There was no answer for the problem of housing. Volunteers would buy out all of the camping tents on like Lesvos and Chios and all of the nearby islands, and then like go to Athens, and they would hand out those camping tents and a wind would come through and they would all break. Or there would be a fight in camp and they would all be destroyed. Not to mention that, one, camping tents under the winter rain, no. But even if it were the summer, these tents are, nobody would want to go camping in them, right? Nobody would want to sleep in them. They're the flimsy, that doesn't even deserve the word plastic. And because the problems were systemic, because they were written into the camp itself, nothing would really solve the worst issues of Moria. And right up until the time that it burned, what was the problem? It was toilets, it was safety, it was rape, it was hygiene, it was housing, obviously.
We had a problem with lack of water, drinking water, drinkable water. We had problem with lack of food. We had problem with electricity. We had problem with bathroom. We had problem with hygiene. And also lack of safety in so many ways. What I mean by that is like going out of your tent or room in the midnight or when it was a bit darker, you could really feel that you fear walking inside the camp or around it.
The night should be calm. This is for resting. It's for retaking your power or your energy for your next day. But for us, like, for full of fear. Moria at night was something else. You would just stay in your tent, even you had a toilet, even you need to go to drink, to get water.
We were seeing a lot of people who use pampers and sanitary pads to avoid going to the bathroom at night because they knew that they could have been raped, stabbed, robbed while they were going to the bathroom. We were seeing a lot of children and they all had stomachache, and this was because they were too afraid to go to the bathroom that they were not going at all.
I remember a lot of shouts, a lot of scream, but we weren't able to go out to watch where is or from who is. You are just thinking about yourself. You want to be safe and you have to save your life.
Some people was getting drunk and like they will stop you and ask you if you have money on you or a phone or whatever you have on you. They will ask you to give it to them, and if you do not give them whatever they want, they will just grab you with a knife and they just kill people if they have, and then they take stuff, whatever you have on you.
There were a lot of fights happening, a lot of violence happening. Let me tell you one thing. If there was a fight or violence happening among the residents of the camp, it would take so long for the police to arrive there. Most of the times they would come or arrive, you know, after conflict or somebody was injured badly. It was just too late.
Open the borders! The police entered into the camp, they roamed through it, they beat people, they threw them to the ground, they pelted them with rocks, they struck them with their batons, they dragged pregnant women out of their ISO boxes. And all these things are not being made up or exaggerated. You can watch them in videos if you haven't seen already, and who knows what else was going on that we didn't see in the video.
The refugees that arrived there, they start to just see and experience that kind of violence. And then with this hunger, with this like fight for everything there in the camp, and being for long time there and not knowing what's happening to you, something small could bring them from 0 to 100. And that make them to be violent, to themselves, to the others.
People were always, you know, mad, angry. Most of them were depressed and also very much lost about their future, about their, you know, decisions, about what is going to happen to them, basically.
It's really difficult to understand what it means to experience something like this for months and years. I don't think that images really can convey what it means. Moria was a place where you kind of you were forced to take life day by day, as if nothing was really granted, because nothing was really granted. So if I force you to wait in a place with very little perspective on how long this wait might be and what you can do in the meantime, of course this situation is going to have a huge psychological impact on you.
Imagine you go in an empty field somewhere with some trees and they give you a tent, and you don't know where you go for medical stuff, you don't know how to get food, you don't know where's like a shower, bathroom, and this is stuff, and you couldn't even sleep in the night, and this rain and this wind and this tent, like you could hear the water passing under the tent, and then after this all you have to go in this early morning for a piece of cake and a bottle of water, like early morning, a very long line, and wait, and you had to wait long for water, and if the water came, there was like a huge, like a group of people waiting for that. And this hunger, this waiting, this not having the basic things of the life change you so fast. Like in 1-2 months, you're not the same person anymore. So it was kind of like this kind of games that put you in a bad situation if you can survive. And there was like thousands of people try to survive.
In that moment, you think just about yourself and about that situation you are living in. You don't care about anything else.
It changes your mindset in so many ways. You begin to lose faith.
I get more scared. I get more stressful, and then slowly small things could make me mad, could make me to not be patient. So this turned me to a person that like kind of stay far from other people, to be always in my tent.
Of course, like there was a big mental health crisis. So what I was seeing, I was working with adults and also with children and adolescents and their families, was symptoms that we could link to depression, to anxiety, to PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and to high stress. I have also to say that most of the people that were accessing services were not the people in the worst conditions. The people who managed to come to us and to speak to us, to share their stories and their issues, were people who could somehow function in their daily life. But there were also people who could not even leave their tents because their levels of depression were too high to allow them to go outside and to relate to whatever was happening around them. A lot of things that my patients were telling me were mostly related to Moria and the life in Moria than to the life in war that they experienced before. I remember a lot of children were coming with self-harm and self-injured, and we didn't have the capacity to treat all of this, so we had to refer these cases to the hospital or to the organization who were providing psychiatric interventions, but there was not space for everybody, so the waiting list, people were waiting for everything. There was a huge waiting list also for these psychiatric essential services that are life-saving many times. There were a lot of children who attempted suicide, so we had a lot of this that we were seeing, and when you see a child and you work with a child that attempted suicide, you never forget it. So it's
Moria was a hell, and that was the shortest version that we could talk about Moria. And I always said, like, to just say Moria was bad is not enough for Moria. It would not ever be enough. Moria was great in being bad.
I think that, at least in the beginning, and evolving into time, Moria became part of the apparatus of deterrence of Greece. So it became a dark hole where you could send messages to people arriving saying, don't come to Greece because this is what is waiting for you. It was not so verbal in the beginning. It was not an actual part of the policy. It became part of the policy, unfortunately. That is a very big problem. We used Moria in order to put fear into people's minds. It didn't work, of course, because deterrence never works. When you want to scare people off, It's not a bad camp condition that will stop them, not even the threat of getting them into prison as we do now.
In my mind, it's a failure to understand the refugee mentality. Nobody's going to give up the comfort of home and proximity to parents and loved ones, culture, knowing the language, being inside of the tradition, everything you know. Leave it behind in order to just get to Turkey. They're only going to take on that amount of risk and endure that much sacrifice if the payoff is going to be very high, if it's going to be something like Europe.
They could keep the camp better. They could help people better. That makes me to believe it was in purpose. And also they wanted, somehow I feel like that they wanted to give this kind of message, like you see that the refugees are wild, the refugees are violent, the refugees are bad, they not show mercy to each other, so how we had to keep them there, we cannot just let them go in Europe. But that was not the truth. If you bring one European person there for 2 months in this camp would be the same as the others.
Everybody knew that it was hell and nobody did anything. Why? Like, if this was not done on purpose, I don't know what else to believe. I really think that this was done on purpose to dehumanize people. Really, it's easier, I think, to condemn someone who you don't consider human and you don't consider a person who behaves like you.
A concentration camp serves the purpose of dehumanizing people. And in order to dehumanize people, you need to reduce them to very little. And in this case, it is people who are overwhelming us and possibly dangerous. And Muslim. Yeah. But really just the foreigners who are possibly dangerous and overwhelming us. And you just reduce them to that, and then you're containing the threat. Of course, you enter into a feedback loop also with the camp that once you see people living in dehumanized conditions, then you say, look, they're subhuman, they should be treated like this, right? I'm thinking on the part of a guard or somebody maintaining the camp.
This, in combination with propaganda and how you frame things, gets used to create fear and mistrust and a specific picture about specific type of people that creates again more fear, and that's how you create nationalism and racism, I guess.
I think that we implicitly chose Moria to exist because it served a political purpose, unfortunately. And this is something that we need to address, we need to discuss, we need to own as societies. I'm not talking only about Greece and the government and the politicians. I'm talking about the whole of the EU.
You must show patience. Trust the European and the Greek authorities. And the solution is coming.
I would say that it made me realize that the idea that I had of Europe is not the reality. I had this illusion of a united Europe where everybody, all states were helping each other and we were following some human rights and laws. I saw that this was not happening at all.
When I have arrived to Greece, 100% this changed my idea about Europe. Like I thought, there would be like human rights and I would be safe, which is I have never seen it in Greece, especially in Moria camp. I never felt it was safe for me to be there.
I heard so much like about humanity, but I didn't see any humanity there actually.
Throughout all of my journey, I feel lonely and like disappointed. A lot of negative feelings come to me, like why I am here, why should I be like an Afghan woman, and why even they have to discriminate me and to not accept me. When I arrived in Greece, I experienced discrimination about my existence also. As a refugee, they don't want me even to exist. I say to myself always, okay, you fight it all the time, Zara. You stand for yourself, for your existence. And you have to continue.
Greece is not a hospitable place for asylum, for recognized refugees. And this is done on purpose. We are not presenting and offering alternatives to people who are going to stay in Greece. Although we know that the majority of people who get recognized in Greece would like to stay in Greece. And because we know that, we don't offer them the possibility to stay by political decision. And this is a choice. This is done on purpose.
I mean, how can we expect that people can easily get integrated afterward? They leave everything behind. They don't know if they will ever come back, see this family again, and all these kind of things. And then we make the way so hard, and they are stuck in camps over years with no education, with no, you know, the social society to integrate yourself into the culture, into the language, and all these kind of things. But our expectations are still very, very high. Like if they at some point make it to Germany and get the permission to stay, then you need to deliver.
When I want to sleep, every night, when it's become dark, all my memories will start popping out. I feel all the sounds that I could hear inside Moria. Even the scream of woman, the cry of child, the sound of old man who was nagging about his pain from the dizziness, from illness. I could hear the sound of the fight. All of them, they are playing in my mind. Even I try to close my mind. There is sound, there is memory. And who cares? No one except me, except the people who were living there.
It was sort of just scorched earth everywhere. Thousands of people with their few worldly possessions, either completely dazed and separated from their family and crying, or running for their lives, or desperately searching for loved ones. So everybody who had barely managed to grab a backpack full of clothes was suddenly sleeping on the street. So for about 10 or 11 days, people had no access to hygiene facilities, had no access to reliable food or water, was sleeping outside.
The days after the fire were like really a humanitarian catastrophe.
There was no water, no food, nothing per week there. People was really starving.
The 10 days on the road were probably the hardest days of my life, and I was just going there.
And there, I mean, whole Europe was watching it. The fire was basically live streamed as well. You expected that things are changing. I mean, Moria was really a disaster for the European Union. It was a shame that it existed for 6 years. And then the fire happened. So for me, it felt like, oh, we are now being at the point where things could change. But no. What happened was that they started to build up the same kind of structure, like tents on a very bad place, like directly at the coast. It's super windy, there's no shadow at all. The medical service, of course, very limited. You were again trapped people on a very small place while the pandemic.
Following the devastating fires in Moria, we swiftly evacuated the camp with no casualties, ensured that the provision for food, water and medical supplies was uninterrupted. We transferred the unaccompanied minors. We built a new camp within a few days to provide safety and shelter to all the asylum seekers. And we're testing everyone coming into the camp for coronavirus with a new rapid test.
In terms of intention, yeah, it took a little while to build the new camp. But it's very hard for me to believe that they weren't left there for 11 days without any systems of distribution of basic necessities established by the government and the army, which was called in to handle this. It's hard for me to imagine that that happened for any other reason than to send a message that no matter how bad it gets, it can be 10 times worse.
It has nothing to do with reception facilities. They are prison camps. We need to understand this clearly. These are centers of biopolitical control for people that have done nothing wrong. These systems come not only to contain and control the migration populations of the camp, they come as systems of and continuous devaluation and dehumanization of migrants.
If you take the example of Samos, as Greek Council for Refugees, we have described Samos as a prison, with prison-like conditions. And now the ombudsperson of the EU is calling Samos the same thing, a prison.
I don't think you can find such a well-equipped prison in Germany. I think it's one of the most modern and from the infrastructure, how it's built up, it fits perfectly in this kind of institutions, and that's very sad. Like, people are looking for safety, and the way how we try to get this in a system is with basically prisons that we are building up in the middle of nowhere, far away in the external borders.
The main idea behind the CCACs was to
to drive the camps away from the main populated areas of the islands. They're so far away from everything. They need to be isolated, so when people stop seeing them, stop seeing the migrants, they tend to forget they exist there. The standards for all the camps, it is double fence with NATO standard barbed wire. The camps are under constant control of cameras, thermal cameras, drones. We need to look deeper into how the systems work. What are the dangers of the increasing use of AI technology? Some people build these algorithms and the systems based on some ideas and narratives. Are they the narratives of freedom and solidarity? Or are they the narratives of hate and racism?
When the government found out that the European Commission is not funding closed centers, they added a word calling them closed controlled access centers. That allowed them to get money to build 5 CCACs, 250 million euros in 5 islands.
The CCAs in Greece turned out to be the blueprint for the European future detention centers in the border areas. We have seen already this happening in Kos and Samos, where the new CCACs are already operating. But I think the most obvious example is the Pastria camp in Lesbos. Definitely we can understand all the human rights violations running through the camp, from the right to freedom, when people are detained for no reason actually, to access to education. Small children in the camps will never find a chance to follow their classes. But the most worrying thing about Pastria is where it's situated, in the middle of a pine forest. The biggest danger is what is going to happen when a wildfire takes place. Wildfires in these ecosystems is not just a probability. We know that it's going to take place sooner or later. And then, by having people, 5,000 people in that place, it is a clear decision that you're ready to sacrifice 5,000 people in favor of your own policies.
Nea Demokratia said that we are going to create stricter conditions, more organized, that will allow us to take control of the matter, to take control of the problem. So it was deemed a problem since the beginning. So I would say that the natural evolution of Moria is a closed control access center in the context of the stricter policy of a more conservative government, which wants to take control of the problem. It's a question of narrative and implementing policy, and politics, of course.
I had a kind of a picture in my mind. I had a hope in my heart. I had a energy in my hands to do something, to wish something. That's going to be like from darkness to the light. But when I experienced that all in my life, I found myself a lost soul. I found myself that I somehow forgot that all energy in my hands and hope in my heart. And I didn't find the light. Like, I feel myself in this between. I lost what I grow in it, this land, this family, this everything I had, and I have front of me a country, people that it's belong to them. Somehow they give you that feeling, somehow they show you that's mine. You lost what you had. So I'm in this between, and I feel like a lost person that tried to live in that between, try to find a place to just like excuse myself and sleep there. And at the moment, my life, it's kind of like in this tiny area. And I'm sure a lot of people is in this tiny area.